This video is brought to you by my new album entitled Dougal's Treats. It's full of hummable melodies, bluesy riffs and the occasional bit of virtuoso flashy stuff as well. If you enjoy bluesy rock guitar with memorable tunes and solos that wail like a banshee, then check out the links in the description. The premium version includes all of the tabs for each tune, videos and jam tracks as well. Thanks for listening. Now on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Now, Tuesday usually means a top 5 video, but occasionally, very occasionally, like today, I simply cannot narrow the choices down to a mere 5, and I have to turn it into a top 10 list. So today's a top 10 Tuesday, and as you've already seen from the thumbnail and the video title, what I'm going to talk about today are my favourite rock bands of all time. And the criteria for this is it has to be a band. Okay, it's not just one guy with some backing musicians, otherwise it would just be Gary Moore all the time. But you know, it has to be a band where there's a collaborative effort to some degree, and I'm casting the net as wide as possible. You know, all the different genres of rock. I'm not just talking about sort of very narrow, crunchy guitars and foot stomping riffs kind of stuff. You know, we're going to kind of have a little bit of variety in here, but I think you'll agree that in some way or other, all of the bands on this list can be described as belonging to the rock genre. So these are my 10 favourite, force of habit, my 10 favourite rock bands of all time, starting with
Thunder.
Yeah, bunch of lads from South London who emerged in the late 80s. I think they were on at Nebworth, or was it Donington? One of the big rock festivals, probably Monsters of Rock actually. Which year was it that Whitesnake with Steve Vai headlined Donington? Well, they were one of the acts that were also on the bill, I believe, at the behest of the Whitesnake himself, Mr. Coverdale. They're a great band. They're nothing pretentious. They just do what they do, which is good old classic rock, incredibly well. I want to give a shout out here to the vocalist Danny Bowes, because I think he is one of the unsung or underrated, shall we say, rock vocalists of all time. He has an incredible set of pipes on him, and recommended albums, go and check out the first album really, Backstreet Symphony or Laughing on Judgment Day. That's another great album. There's a good best of as well called Their Finest Hour and a Bit, where there's a great version of the cover version of the Stones classic Gimme Shelter. So yeah, go and check out Thunder. I'll put links to all of these bands, some selected selections of their work in the description, so go and check them out. Next,
AC/DC.
Yeah, with this band, many people either fall into a Bon Scott era fan or a Brian Johnson era fan. I'm quite happy listening to both. I'll happily listen to Highway to Hell, then Back in Black. I think Back in Black was possibly the first album of theirs that I heard. I remember the music video for You Shook Me All Night Long. Brian Johnson doing his best Andy Capp routine. Yeah, fantastic band, just good, honest meat and potatoes rock and roll. They have a formula, it works for them, and it works for me as well. No introductions, no kind of explanations necessary. If you know about AC/DC, you know whether you like them or you don't. I do. Next,
Thin Lizzy.
One of the few rock bands that actually appeared on Top of the Pops as I was growing up in the 70s. I remember Chinatown, and I remember Sarah, and I remember countless other singles that they had. There's what's the other one? Hollywood. That's another one that I remember them lip syncing like crazy to under the BBC spangly lights on a Thursday night. Great band. For me, there are sort of two camps with this. People kind of say that the classic lineup of Thin Lizzy is with Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson on guitars. Yeah, I mean, the whole Live and Dangerous Jailbreak kind of era, yeah, I can get along with that. But, you know how much of a massive Gary Moore fan I am. I would have to say that my favourite album, and therefore my favourite lineup of the band, is the one where Gary Moore would play, the Black Rose era. Fantastic band. I love everything they did, even going back to like the earlier stuff, Vagabonds of the Western World and Shades of a Blue Orphanage, all that sort of really early stuff with Eric Bell. And then, of course, Whiskey in the Jar. And then, as we move on through into, kind of Jailbreak and Johnny the Fox and, even the Snowy White era. Which album was that? Can't remember. Was that Renegade? I might be wrong. My memory isn't what it used to be. But, I can't think of a single piece of music Thin Lizzy have ever recorded that I didn't like. So, yeah, they had to be on this list. Next.
Rainbow. As
I've already hinted at, you didn't tend to get a lot of rock music on mainstream media in the late 70s. That was largely because a lot of the bands weren't releasing singles. They regarded that as being perhaps a little bit beneath them. We're an album band, so if they didn't have a single out, they wouldn't get any airplay on the top 40 radio, or you wouldn't see them on Top of the Pops, which was like all we had really back in the late 70s. But then, along come Judas Priest, Living After Midnight and United, and then Rainbow with the Down to Earth period, Graham Bonnet on vocals. And I can still distinctly remember watching the promo video for Since You've Been Gone, and just thinking Graham Bonnet was the coolest looking man on earth, and this was the catchiest song I think I'd heard in a long time. Bear in mind that the charts at the time was full of like Boney M and the sort of dying embers of the 70s 50s rock and roll craze, like bands like Shawaddy Waddy, and anyone else remember Rocky Sharp and the Replays? And then here's this massively catchy guitar driven song that was round about the time I just started playing the guitar, and I really remember thinking I want to be able to play like that. So then, obviously, from Since You've Been Gone, All Night Long, that was the next single. I ended up getting the LP, as they were called in those days, and then started kind of delving back further into the Dio era of the band, and then it was they were one of the bands that sort of got me into the heavier side, if you can call that sort of stuff. By comparison with Boney M, yes, it is heavier. They were one of the bands that sort of lured me away from my Shawaddy Waddy fixation and got me interested in rock music proper, if you like. So, yeah, they had to be on the list. Next.
Queen.
Yeah, you got to have a bit of Queen, don't you? Again, one of the bands that did release singles, your Led Zeppelins and your Deep Purples and your Black Sabbaths, they didn't tend to be singles-orientated bands, but Queen were. And talking about iconic Top of the Pops moments, yes, I remember being round at my granny's house on a Thursday night, because she sometimes used to babysit me, and that iconic Bohemian Rhapsody video, was like nothing I'd ever seen. When was that? 1975. I will have been in 1975. I was 8, and dearie me, it excited the little 8-year-old Mr. Robson, and then just listen to everything that they came out with after that. It was just like really good, catchy music. And even at that young, tender age, I could tell that there was complexity and depth there that you didn't hear in the works of other people on the radio. And then, has there ever been a better performance than Queen at Live Aid? I mean, 40 years later, people still kind of reference that. And I don't think there's a month goes by where I don't watch it on YouTube for some reason or other. So yeah, Queen had to be on the list. Next,
Dire Straits.
What can I tell you? I know some people will sort of say Dire Straits are a rock band. I would say that they come under the umbrella of rock music. It's a broad church, and I think that they belong in it. And 1978 or 79 when Sultans of Swing came out. Again, it was around about the time I was hearing bands like Rainbow for the first time, and I think another one that I remember at the time was Black Sabbath, Never Say Die. But yeah, around about that same sort of time, this was just like, I'd never heard a guitar sound like this before. I'd never heard this kind of laid-back, gritty, kind of bluesy shuffle rock before. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard. And it sounded unique, and it was a sound that I liked. And Sultans of Swing, and then the other singles. Well, going forward, you had Lady Writer. That was off the second album, Communique, wasn't it? And then like the whole Alchemy Live album and Tunnel of Love and all of that sort of stuff. Just massive fan of this band. I've got to tell you, I'm not a massive fan of Mark Knopfler since his post Dire Straits work. That's what I mean. People tend to think that Dire Straits were the Mark Knopfler band, and he was the main songwriter and everything. But there was a chemistry there that when it was Mark and John Ilsley on bass, and whoever was in the second guitar position at the time, either David Knopfler or who else, Hal Linders, and then later Jack Sonny. There was a chemistry there that brought out the best, I think, in Mark's songwriting and in his guitar playing and his performing, which just isn't there since he's become a sort of a confirmed solo artist. Brothers in Arms, not my favourite album, but it does sound a bit dated now. But the eponymous first album, Communique, Making Movies, the live Alchemy double album, then you've got a little bit of a dip with Brothers in Arms, but I can forgive that because there's enough good songs on there to kind of carry it. I think title track alone, really. And then the On Every Street album from, was that 1990? Criticism of that was it's probably a little bit over long, but there is a good album there if you condense it, which is one of the things I've done on Spotify. I've made a better version of the album, different running order, and kind of skipped some of the weaker tracks. But yeah, love the band. Can't have a word said against them. Next,
Steely Dan.
Probably a controversial one to put on a list of rock bands, but as I say, it's kind of jazzy, funky rock, but it's still rock, and for me, straight out of the Traps, the first album, Can't Buy You Thrill. You do get some bands who take 2 or 3 albums to hit their stride and find their voice. But I think Can't Buy You Thrill is one of their best albums. I think I'm going to say something controversial now, I think it's a better album than something like Aja. That's a good album, but I think Can't Buy You Thrill is a better one. And just love every track on it, never tire of hearing it. And the same could be true for albums like, Royal Scam, even the sort of latter output, like Two Against Nature, great, and Pretzel Logic. There's another fantastic album. Again, I'd struggle to find an album where I didn't love at least half the tracks on it. So, they've got to be on this list. Next, Whitesnake. Now, what I was saying about AC/DC earlier about there being 2 eras of the band, and some people are a fan of one but not the other, I'm definitely more of a fan of the early Whitesnake era. Basically when you had that guitar partnership of Mickey Moody and Bernie Marsden. For me, that's the proper Whitesnake. Later on, when they just became a hair metal band, I was meh. Not my favourite genre of music, that sort of glam 80s pop rock, but the late 70s, early 80s kind of gutsy blues rock that they were doing. I mean, albums like Live in the Heart of the City and just what would other albums be? Come and Get It, Love Hunter, great albums. Some of the album artwork, especially Love Hunter, you could call it a bit questionable in this modern day and age, but it's all about the music, and it's just good, gutsy, ballsy, foot stomping, bluesy rock, and I'm always up for a bit of that. And I think this incarnation of the band did it better than most. Next.
Pink Floyd.
Not a massive fan of progressive rock, it has to be said. I find a lot of the more purist progressive rock to be a little bit angular and a difficult listen. Like early Genesis, some of it's all right, but it's never going to make any kind of top ranking list for me. And the album that everybody kind of bangs on about that's into progressive rock, Yes's Tales from Topographic Oceans. Dear me, life's just too short, isn't it? Not a fan of that sort of stuff, but Camel with the Snow Goose. Camel nearly made it onto this list, actually, but there are other bands who have more output that I like than Camel, one of which is, of course, Pink Floyd. Like many people of my generation, I first got to know Pink Floyd in 1979 with Another Brick in the Wall topping the charts in at Christmas 1979. There's a good pub trivia quiz for you. What was the last Christmas UK number one of the 1970s? People always start thinking about, all the tinsel spangly kind of, sleigh bell encrusted offerings from all the usual suspects. But no, it was Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. Heard that, loved it, got the album, loved it. Didn't really understand it, but loved it. And then, started going backwards and, obviously you discovered Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here. And then, things like Gumma. I'm going to say it's an enjoyable listen, but it's not an easy listen. Pink Floyd, they've got to be on this list. Gilmour's guitar playing, and just the whole, again, the chemistry there. I don't think, with one or two exceptions, that either David Gilmour or Roger Waters has done anything that's equalled, or certainly nothing that's surpassed what they did together in Floyd. That creative tension, that chemistry there certainly had magical results. And yeah, that's why Pink Floyd are on the list. Let's see what the last one is, shall we? Next.
Deep Purple. Steve Morse era.
Steve Morse era Deep Purple. I remember the excitement in, 1984, when the classic Mark II lineup was reuniting for that, what was the album called? Was it Nobody's Perfect? I can't remember, but the one with Knocking at Your Back Door as the big song off there. Lots of great riffs, lots of great songwriting, and Gillan's vocals and John Lord's kind of Hammond organ. It's all the things that you expect on a Deep Purple album. And then you get Ritchie kind of throwing his toys out of the pram with some awful, dissonant, nasty kind of caterwauling guitar solos. Again, Knocking at Your Back Door, I'll reference that. But then Steve Morse joined in 94, and it was, for me, a breath of fresh air. Revitalised the band. I mean, that first album he did with them, Perpendicular, not a song on there that I would skip. Because that was probably one of the first albums, not one of the first albums, but by then it was like I wasn't replacing existing albums that I'd owned on cassette and vinyl. I was buying them for the first time on CD, and there's not a song on that one that I would skip. Great album, and I can't think of other albums that they've done with Steve. Up until that album full of rock and roll covers, was it Turning to Crime? Great album, great fun album. You cannot listen to that without having a big smile on your face. The live album, I think the much, much underrated live album that they did with Steve live at the Olympia 96 is just a great, great live rock album. The version of Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming on that album for me is just one of the greatest pieces of music ever played. It's just utterly fantastic. Steve is absolutely on fire playing on that track, and it's just so emotive and melodic, and I love it. And all of the all of the classic songs that you want, you know, like Black Knight, Smoke on the Water, you know, all of the usual suspects, they're all on there, and they all get a very, very, very fine rendition of. So yeah, the whole Deep Purple, the whole kind of Steve Morse era Deep Purple for me, and I know I'm going to get flack for saying this because I've got flack in the past for saying it. It's my favourite period of the band. I'm not dissing Richie Blackmore, you know, Rainbow are on this list, don't forget, and you know the early Deep Purple stuff before there was tensions to the point, before they were wanting to punch each other's lights out all the time, or before they were all wanting to punch Richie's lights out all the time. You know, there was some great moments. I mean, Machine Head is you know, it's a work of genius as an album. You know, but for me, as a whole, the Steve Morse era of the band is my favourite. So there you go. Those are my 10 favourite rock bands of all time. I'm sure, I know you won't let me down, that you have a list of your own. Well, leave that in the comments and let me know what you think of my list. Maybe I'm a blithering idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about, and how could I possibly put that band on the list? Well, I did. It's my list. You can do your own and leave it in the comments. But that's it for today, folks. Hope you've enjoyed the video and found it entertaining in some small way. If that's the case, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you haven't already done so, why not drop me a like as well while you're at it? Don't forget the live stream every Friday, 5 PM UK time. We drink beer and we talk about stuff, basically. That's as complicated as it gets, or as it needs to be. It is a great way to kick off the weekend, and I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.